Okay, so Tom, how did you prepare to reprise your role as Henry in KCD2, and what were you most excited for?
In terms of preparation for reprising the role of Henry, firstly we had a huge day-and-a-half long talk from Dan, the lead creative, and Prokop, who's one of the lead story writers and lead designers on the game, and they sat us down. We hadn't seen them probably for about 2.5 years in the interim between KCD and starting the second game. And they just talked us through the main skeleton of the story, which was pretty much in place even then. This is probably like, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. So even though lots of elements have grown and changed over the kind of evolution of the game, the basics of the story were absolutely in place and haven't really changed. So from there, I had a notebook, and they brought me a notebook. So I kind of thought, okay, clearly I'm taking notes. And I've still got the notebook. I wrote down notes for the kind of main body of the story, and it was a really useful thing to reference back to as we were kind of going through the game, so the making of the game itself. But in terms of the character, it's an unusual one because unlike TV and film and theatre, which makes up the majority of my work, I've spent so much time playing this character, literally years more than I've spent playing any other character. So he kind of exists in my bones, and it's kind of, I guess it's not where you say goodbye to other characters because you're no longer playing them, but with this character, he's been a real mainstay of my working life. And so in terms of who he is and how he sounds and those sorts of things, it's been a real surprise how much that just remains in my system. So in that respect, there wasn't a huge amount of kind of preparing because the story also picks up narratively almost exactly from where the last game ends. So there's not some great change in him. There's a huge change within the game, the new game. But in terms of between the two games, there's kind of no change. He's the same person.
Are there any personality traits that you share with Henry?
Well, in terms of who Henry is, he's entirely created by the writers and by Dan, and and it's my job to kind of move towards that character and become that character, not to kind of make him move towards me and become me. But in terms of like what we share, and I suppose I think my friends might not agree with this, but I think I have quite a good moral compass. I think I'm someone that tries to do the right thing, and that's definitely a kind of big feature of Henry. I've spoken a little bit about the importance of family for Henry. That's hugely important for me. I'm incredibly close to my family, and I feel like his family are kind of really the main engine of his story, and the loss of his parents, and that being the thing that constantly drives him right the way through the second game. It's still the kind of thing that anchors him and drives him forwards. And that's also true of me. I love my family to bits. I'm incredibly close to my family. I lost my dad quite a long time ago, and obviously, so the loss of a parent is something that I guess we share. And while it's not something that I kind of literally mind, or I don't know how healthy it is for acting to be like a therapy of sorts. But inevitably, like everything you do when you're acting, you're always drawing off real world experience, whether or not you're doing it consciously or otherwise. So that's kind of definitely a big thing for me, that I sort of, like most people in the world, I kind of know what that feels, the loss of someone significant. We've all had that, I think. So yeah, and also I like to think he's got a great sense of humour, and he's, I flatter myself to say that I have a great sense of humour, but I definitely like to have fun, and he likes to have fun. So that's something that I was definitely able to bring to him, and luckily we have a kind of brilliant cast of actors who also like to have fun and play very easily. So that was quite easy, to be honest.
Why do you think your friends would say that you do not have a good moral compass?
I don't know. I can't speak for my friends, but I think it would just be flattering myself to say that I'm an morally upright person. But I do. I try and make good choices, and whether or not I succeed in that, I don't know.
Can you share any memorable memories from the motion capture sessions, or memorable memories in general?
Yeah, there were tons of memorable moments in the motion capture studio. Loads of funny, silly things happen inevitably on a daily basis when you're kind of dressed head to toe in lycra covered in dots. It's kind of already quite funny before you've even started. In terms of memorable moments, I think for me, as I was saying before, that those kind of family moments, the big anchors of his story, which generally relate to his parents and the stuff that happened at the very beginning of KCD. No spoilers for those that haven't played it at all, but there's a big event that happens at the very, very start of the first game. And so as we went through, again, no spoilers, but the family feature in a kind of different capacity, in a kind of different way, shall we say, in the second game. So they are still, those still form really big flags in the sand of Henry's story and kind of bookend his story and who he is. And so those for me were some of the most memorable because, I don't know, there's something really iconic and kind of filmic about them. And Dan, the lead creative, came, you know, he was involved in the first game a hell of a lot. He was still incredibly involved in the second game. But day to day, because there was so much more material, he wouldn't always be in the voiceover booth with me. He would always be there for most of the motion capture, but not every single bit. But those scenes he absolutely came back for, and it was a real kind of like shared experience for he and I, because he and I, along with all the other amazing team at Warhorse and of course the players themselves, have kind of built this character together. And so when we got to these particularly scenes right towards the end of the second game, which are huge, you know, they're really seminal for Henry, and I guess for us as creatives, because we've kind of taken this character on this journey together. And so he came back for all those, and that was really moving and really memorable in that we didn't know if the game was going to succeed, of course, but for us, whatever happened with it, we felt this really strong personal attachment to this character in the story. And so filming those scenes was, yeah, really memorable and really moving.
If you could describe Dan using 3 words as a boss, which ones would they be?
Dan's a great boss, intelligent, funny, and kind. He's kind of, yeah, he's really fun. And I guess crucially, he really knows what he wants from the story. So actually, he's been a really easy person to work with right from the very beginning, because he has this absolute clarity on what he wants. And that's usually, you know, I've been lucky enough, most of the directors that I've worked with in my working life have, that's been the case with them. But with him, this is a bit different because I haven't done a lot of gaming work. All my work is kind of TV and film. And usually, not always, but usually in TV and theatre, the director is not necessarily the writer. That's less common than it is common. In this case, for the whole project and the central character to be the absolute brainchild of the lead creative is, I think, probably quite normal in the gaming world in a way that it isn't necessarily elsewhere. So the benefit of that is that right from the very beginning, literally from the day we met, he knew who this character was and what he wanted. And so in terms of what he asked of me and how we kind of got there together, it was kind of straightforward because he's a great director. He's really clear, and we found a shorthand together very quickly where I understood what he wanted. He knew how to ask for it. I think he understood my way of working, and I certainly understood his. And so it just made for a kind of pleasant, quite straightforward working relationship, actually. And he's just a lot of fun. Like I say, he's very clear about what he wants. I now know very quickly how to get there, and that leaves a lot of time to just mess around and have a good time.
In what ways do you feel that KCD2 pushes the boundaries of storytelling in video games? I mean, the script has roughly 2.2 million words, and that is a lot.
Yeah, I think it pushes the boundaries in lots of ways. Firstly, in terms of size. So, as you say, just the word count alone is enormous. The size of the maps is enormous. The fact that there are 2 maps is unusual. So, just in literal size, like geographical size, and the kind of the scope of where you can go and what you can do, that's much bigger. But what comes with that, perhaps more importantly, is the scope of the storytelling and the characters. So then it means that what you can do with all your characters, but especially your kind of central character that the players are playing as, you can go down a million different roads in a way that you couldn't if it was just a smaller game. And so there's kind of no point in making a massive game unless you take advantage of that, unless you make sure those characters are really rich and are kind of pursuing all those different choices, and crucially that the player has control over those choices, which of course in KCD2 they do. And I think that's for me probably the most exciting thing about the second game is the scope of choice, the different levels of Henry that you can create. I mean, he's the same character fundamentally. Like at his core, he's the same person, because it would be kind of implausible and ridiculous for him not to be. But in terms of the choices that he can make, those are much further reaching. And then my job, of course, becomes making sure that I play all those different versions of him as kind of honestly and authentically as I can, so that when the players make those choices are kind of realised as authentically and honestly as they can be. They've definitely done that in the writing. The writing is absolutely beautiful in terms of the way the world is realised. Warhorse have absolutely done their job. I hope I've done my job too in terms of supporting that. But yeah, I think that's kind of the most exciting thing that this game is really pushing the boundaries of. Certainly in terms of an RPG, but in any game really, it's absolutely doing that. What
was your reaction when you first saw the world and your character Henry being brought back to life?
Well, when I saw the new world, I was completely blown away. Mostly the word that I keep coming back to is cinematic. Like it has this hugely cinematic quality in a way that the game had in terms of its identity, but it wasn't always able to realise in terms of its execution. Like it's an incredible game for the resources they had. You know, KCD started as a Kickstarter campaign. They didn't have a ton of resources, and they were able to make this amazing beast with not a huge amount of resources. Second time round, with the benefit of the first game's success, they were able to put a huge amount of resources behind it. And they've said themselves that they're now kind of making the game that they originally set out to make. So in terms of that it's now able to be truly cinematic in a way that it would be impossible to with the resources of the first game. So the first game has it has all the brilliant qualities that make the second game what it is, otherwise there would be no second game. But the second game is just much more able to hold that and to kind of execute it in a, well, certainly visually and in lots of other ways, like a really impressive way. So it just looks stunning. You know, I was watching a sequence near the start, again, no spoilers, but Henry's fine until he's not. You know, quite quickly he's very challenged by lots of really difficult situations. And there are like flashback sequences and stuff, as I said, that involves the family, which isn't a massive spoiler because it happens quite early. But all of these things, these kind of ghosts come back to haunt him really quickly. And the way they've done that is mind-blowing. When we were recording those scenes, we had a really rudimentary understanding of what it was they were trying to do and kind of very simple animatics to show what that would be. But that is a world away from how it looks when you play the game. And it's, you know, the soundscape, Jan Walter's music, of course, just everything comes together in a way that you think of like a great filmmaker like Christopher Nolan and how he's able to kind of draw together all of those elements. You know, I flatter us to make that comparison to him, but the guys at Warhorse are able, in gaming terms, to do that, to kind of draw together all these incredible strands and these amazing departments and into this singular thing, which is the second game.
How do you think Henry's journey will resonate with both newcomer fans and returning fans?
I think it will resonate quite similarly, actually, because they've done this brilliant job in the opening sequences of filling people in on the backstory, i.e. KCD, without kind of hitting them over the head with it like a mallet, you know. So it's kind of fully integrated into the kind of forward thrust of the story. So the story is still moving at pace, but you get the benefit of these like moments that certainly inform new players. So you can absolutely play this game as a newcomer. You don't have to play the first one, although it's probably better if you did, but it's not essential. But it also is the benefit for the fans of the first game who haven't played it for a while, because it's a while since it came out, just to refresh their memory. But they've done that in such a skillful and kind of nuanced way. So it's not like here's what happened last week type thing. You know, it's much more
previously
nuanced.
on KCD.
Yeah, exactly that. It's much more nuanced and dynamic than that, actually.
The game is based on Czech history. Is there something about the Czech history in itself that inspired you? And if so, what and in which way?
Like all the Czech history that is featured in this game is inspiring, I think. You know, this is a game that attracts, well, firstly, a really kind of gorgeous, passionate, positive fan base. We've been really blessed with that, so that's amazing. But something a lot of the fan base share as well is a kind of interest in history. And this game is forensically researched. We have in-house historians, has been spoken about a lot. And so I think you get the benefit of historical knowledge without it being a lecture. Obviously, the point of the game is not just to inform you, but it informs you. And the whole period of history in which this is set, which is not one that I was very familiar with before this game, is fascinating in terms of its sort of Game of Thrones-esque politics. It's kind of like, you know, Tudor England-esque politics. That is amazing. In terms of Czech geography and the Czech Republic itself, it's a place that I've become incredibly fond of and attached to. I've done 4 jobs here previous because a lot of TV filming happens here, as you know. So I've done 4 jobs here prior to this one, and this has obviously been a very long journey. So Prague has really become a second home for me. It would be my home were it not for the fact that my family are all based in the UK. But it's an amazing place full of really amazing people, actually, and lots of those people, fortunately for me, work at Warhorse. But yeah, there's a kind of gentleness and grace to this city, to Prague, and to the whole country in my limited experience of it, that I've grown really fond of and quite attached to.
Do you know any Czech words? And if so, which ones?
I don't know as many Czech words as I should, given the amount of time that I've spent working here. But I do know a few. I know Dobrý den.
Yes.
I know Jakou. I know pivo. 3 words, that's embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, those are the basics. I mean, you can go to any pub and just say, dobrý den, pivo, děkuju, and they will know.
Skills for life.
And then you don't even have to say if you want to pay cash or card. You just like show your phone and they know.
Exactly.
How do people on the street react to seeing you? I mean, you are the face of the whole series.
I think people react slightly differently than they would with the kind of my main body of work, in that if you're watching a TV show or a film or whatever, hopefully you're engaged and there's a level of kind of intense interaction if we're doing our jobs properly. But there's still a kind of removal. You're not kind of in the world. Whereas with gaming, you know, immersion is kind of a huge part of this game's identity in all games, but particularly RPGs. And so the immersive nature of this game is one of the things we're all most proud of. So the fact that somebody plays with my voice in their ear, kind of playing intimately for hours on end, and as me, so to speak, they kind of jump in and out of my body, so to speak, is really different. And so I think if people then see me in the street, and often they don't know that that character is based on a real person's voice or face, it can really freak them out. And I absolutely understand why. That you go. So sometimes people, if they don't know, it definitely freaks them out. They kind of find it totally weird.
I've played as this dude
like,
on my computer. How is he here?
He's just time travelled from 1403. But if they do know, it's still kind of. I think it still throws people because. There's a sort of intimacy, I suppose, between the player and I, because we've shared the same space for like hours on end. And do you know what I will say? It's so overwhelming. It's only been positive, luckily, in my experience, that people are so positive. And one thing I've really noticed as well is that perhaps because of the reasons that I've just spoken about, people are very vocal about and kind of generous with sharing the extent to which the first game and hopefully now the second game has helped them, often with like mental health issues and things like that people often wouldn't necessarily share in the same way with TV and theatre. That I guess because of that intimacy, they will really share how it may have got them through a tough time. That happens a lot. And I find that really, really moving. I find that I hadn't anticipated that as a kind of positive byproduct of working in the gaming world. But I guess people feel an intimacy to me and I feel that they can share that, and that's absolutely fine by me. It's the idea that this character in this game has helped people through dark times is amazing, and is like a huge privilege for me and for everyone at Warhorse.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how games can help you with your mental health, even if you don't think they can.
Yeah.
Somehow they just do help people.
My understanding is they're being used in lots of therapeutic ways, beyond just recreationally, to really help people, and I think that's a massively good thing. Now,
I would like to teach you a few Czech words if you're open to it, because Richard Wágner does the dubbing in Czech for the character Henry.
Yeah, I met him.
And I would love to teach you a few Czech words. So the first one is God's will, which is vůle Boží.
Vůle Boží.
That was amazing, actually. The second one is the iconic line your character says, I'm quite hungry, mám docela hlad.
Mám docela hlad.
Perfect. That's perfect. The third one is the name of your character in Czech language.
Jindřich. I know that. That I do know, yeah. Is it Jindřich?
Jindřich.
Yeah.
That was actually very nice.
That is one word I do know, because people often call me Jindřich instead of Henry, because often I get recognised here in Prague and that's what they will call me, which is fine by me.
Well, so. Perfect. If you could play KCD2 without knowing the story, what's the first thing you'd do in the game?
I think I'll go to a tavern and have some fun. There's lots of room for dark times and dark choices and dark moments, but there's also lots of time for light moments and light fun aside.
So you would have fun as the first thing?
I think I would, yeah.
From what you've seen, which new location are you most excited for?
Personally speaking, I think I'm most excited to explore Kuttenberg, partly because we've been there, so we shot some of the marketing videos there, and it's kind of unimaginable. It's like a kind of chocolate box town that is so idyllic. St Barbara's Cathedral is just mind-blowing.
Have you been inside?
We have. We shot in there in the middle of the night, in fact, when we were doing the announcement video, because we had to do it kind of undercover, although people found out that we were there. But well, it was supposed to be a top secret. But so yeah, we filmed in there in the middle of the night in January of last year. But I've also been in there in the daytime since. But the whole town is just absolutely stunning, and it's kind of an inspired choice for them to move a lot of the narrative of this game there. For lots of reasons, partly because it's beautiful. But also I think in light of what we were saying about Henry and who he is and how he responds to different challenges, being a country boy, there is something really exciting about him moving to a bigger town. All right, it's not Prague, but it's still, at the time, and certainly for someone like Henry, that is a big, bustling kind of cosmopolitan environment by his standards. And so what that does narratively and for him as a character is really exciting. But also it's just really beautiful. So that's where I go.
Yeah, well, it's my favorite city to travel to for a day trip. So.
Okay. I'd also go to Trotsky because we also shot near Trotsky and that is just stunning and amazingly well preserved. If any kind of history buffs are looking for somewhere to visit Trotsky. If
you had to pick just one weapon in KCD2 to survive, which one would it be and why?
The sword. I'd pick my father's sword for very obvious reasons. It's the reason that Henry does everything that he does, so that's what I'd use.
How has the use of facial capture technology enhanced your portrayal of Henry?
The facial capture has helped enormously because in terms of kind of nuance and detail, so for example, those moments with the family where, you might be put, if you're kind of feeling a huge emotion in life, all of us, it doesn't necessarily appear massively on your face at the risk of stating the wildly obvious. So in terms of like the detail of what you can do, not always anyway, depending on who you are. And Henry's sort of someone who is quite stoic at times. And so the reason I'm saying that is because the kind of detail, facially and otherwise, of a performance of a character like this is really important. So those epic scenes, particularly with the family, but with everyone, with Hans having fun with my best friend and all those things, that detail really, really helps tell their story in a kind of more nuanced and precise way. And certainly the kind of many iterations of Henry that you can become in this game, it really helps with that. Although that's more of a voiceover based thing, but it's still impacted in the cutscenes. So it's helped enormously. It just means that the kind of scope of what you can do as an actor with these characters and with these scenarios is made a huge amount easier. And I suspect that's true. I can't speak for the designers, but I'm sure that must have made their jobs easier in post-production when they get to reanalyzing the performances and kind of executing them visually. Their job hopefully just becomes a lot easier as long as we've done a good job. If we haven't, it probably makes it harder.
Well, you said that Henry is a stoic person. He doesn't express emotions on his face very much. Do you,
well, he does,
as a person?
He does. He's stoic, but he is also expressive. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think he can. He is someone who is stoic, but he lets it come out. It does come out because of the stakes of the things that happen to him are so enormous that inevitably it all comes out. But I suppose what I mean is that he's not a clown. He's not a drama queen. He's just someone that is most of the time quite centered until he's not, and that's up to the player to kind of choose. So,
what do you hope players take away from Henry's journey in KCD2?
I hope the players take away exactly what they want to take away, and they can now actually, because the level of the range of detail, as I've said, of this person that you can create, you'll all be playing the same anchored, integral person. It's the same character, but you will take him on your own journey wherever you want him to go and whatever you want him to do. And so I guess it's really down to the player to fulfill their own needs and desires and wishes and dreams and all those things through the kind of medium of Henry. And so it's very personal to them, really. I kind of couldn't answer that for each individual. I feel like each player has to make those choices themselves. What I do hope that all of those journeys share is a sense of fun and enjoyment, absolutely. But also something kind of a bit more also enriching. Something that at the end puts them on a kind of upward swing, and that they feel like they've had a kind of challenging, provocative, interesting, exciting, educational, even if it gets to that. But mostly kind of enjoyable journey. Those are the things that hopefully everybody's journey will share. And I think the guys at Warhorse have done such a good job. I'm pretty confident that they will. Dan
said that he has ideas for more than 60 games, but he's able to do maybe only 3. If one of those was KCD3, would you be open to getting back into Henry's role?
Yeah, of course I would. But it's not in my hands to make those choices. And we know a certain amount, but obviously we can't talk about any of that. And but yeah, I love this character, and it's sort of, like I say, it's kind of in my bones, like no other character. So whatever happens, if this is the end of it, then this has been like the most incredible journey. And if there's more, that's a bonus. So both are fine by me.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was amazing. I hope we didn't drain you a lot.
No, not at all. Not at all. I would have just been sat at the airport waiting for my flight, so I'm quite happy to be here.